Today, we are going to be doing I think now it is the third annual Buzzards Bay Action Committee Legislators Roundtable discussion on issues that relate to the Bay. First of all, I'd like to tell everyone that, in fact, we have, through our senior and education and governmental network, which is known as DCTV in Dartmouth, they've graciously agreed to film our discussion today so that we can provide back to all of the 13 communities and our legislators copies of this proceeding so that you can, if you wish, run it on your educational and governmental network for your communities to see as far as what issues we're dealing with and what progress we'll be making in that particular area. I think, first of all, on behalf of the Buzzards Bay Action Committee, I'd like to thank the legislators who have taken their time, certainly in a week that has been rather eventful from what I saw yesterday when I headed towards Boston and what we have here. You probably have been going back and forth to the State House in snowmobiles for the last few days. I don't know where they put it in Boston, but certainly where we were, they were having the darn time trying to find a way to deal with all the snow. So certainly your schedules, I'm sure, have been shuffled up, but I very much appreciate you taking the opportunity to discuss with the Buzzards Bay Action Committee. I'd first like to take the opportunity to introduce the members of the Buzzards Bay Action Committee. We have from the town of Mattapoisett, Nick Nicholson, representing that community. Harry Brown represents Rochester. Jeffrey Osuch, Executive Administrator for the town of Fairhaven. Scott Alphonse, representing the city. And Charles Grekus, representing the town of Wareham. Al Catino, representing the town of Acushnet. And Leo Locke, representing the town of Bourne. We also have today our Executive Director, Leonard Gonzalez, who is the mover and shaker and putting all the stuff together, and we're very appreciative for all the work he did today, along with Tracy, in organizing this luncheon. We thank you very much. We have other organizations that, in fact, are represented here that are integral to this whole issue of dealing with Buzzards Bay. We have Mark Rasmussen from the Buzzards Bay Coalition. I saw Dr. Joe Costa, representing the Buzzards Bay Project. I also saw David Janik from Coastal Zone Management, and we have Tracy also with the project, and I think I've covered those here. I'm sorry. Near the clock. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Also with the project. Her name? Sarah. I'm sorry. Okay. On the spot here. Alrighty, what we'd like to do is we provided the legislators with a letter detailing the three issues that, in fact, we have been concentrating the focus of the Buzzards Bay Action Committee on over the last 3 years. I'd like to start the discussion out with the first issue that we've spent a lot of time on, and that certainly is the state revolving fund. Every single community, for wastewater issues, for sewer extensions, and for drinking water issues, has been intricately involved with this state revolving fund issue. And I know recently the legislature has taken a specific focus on this because of some of the events last year, and certainly we'd like to hear what they have to say in regards to SRF funds. And I see Bob Kazera has joined us, who has been one of the leaders in organizing this issue of revisiting that. We're very fortunate today to have representing the area legislators. We've got Jim Marshall representing Senator Montigny's office, Representative John Quinn, who represents the town of Dartmouth, Freetown, and Berkeley. We've got Representative Robert Kazera, representing the city of New Bedford and some of the surrounding areas. We've got Representative Michael Rodericks representing Westport and I believe portion of Fall River, am I correct? And we got Representative William Strauss representing the towns of Fairhaven, Mattapoisett, and Rochester?
And Marion and Middleborough.
Good, big area. Okay. spread a little thin.
Maybe some I haven't heard from yet.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay. I think we've heard it certainly enough from me. I'd like to make this so that the legislators have the opportunity to speak on these particular issues, and then once we are ready, we'll certainly get input from our committee members on the state revolving fund, and then we'll move on to some others. But certainly, let's start with state revolving funds.
Well, if I could, the state revolving fund in Massachusetts is a model for other states. It's worked very, very well. It's worked probably even better after we instituted the change that brought it to 0% interest. We're at a point where we feel as though we could leverage the funds from a 2-to-1 ratio to a 3-to-1 ratio. However, the administration is refusing to do that until they can have the communities that are drawing these funds share in the interest costs. So they have a proposal that's in effect, to take effect in July, that would increase the leveraging from the monies that we receive from the federal government and the state match that goes with it to a 3-to-1 ratio, which would benefit all the communities in Massachusetts because it would make more monies available for the projects. Clearly, over the years, the requests and the applications that have been made have exceeded the amounts of monies that can be loaned out. However, they are refusing to go to a 3-to-1 match without imposing some interest cost on the communities. Now, the cost of the loans that are the monies that are bonded are around 5.7% interest, and they would have the communities pick up 2% of that. I filed legislation that would mandate a 3-to-1 ratio and keep it at 0% interest. I've had discussions with the Treasurer's Office and with the Trust Administrator, and I hope to have discussions soon with Ways and Means to see what we can do, and we're looking at a proposal that would sunset the 3-to-1 leveraging and the 0% interest for, say, another 4 or 5 years. It's expected that the reason why we have a revolving fund is that the federal government has made a commitment for a certain period of time, and they expect that by fiscal year 2008 or in 2008, fiscal year 2007, that that contribution by the federal government would cease. And at that point in time, the revolving aspect of the monies that the federal government has given with the state match would take over. And it's the assertion of many of us that we should try to maximize the monies that we're receiving from the federal government and go to the 3-to-1 match. Financially, we've been told that while the risk will increase, the credit rating will not be affected by going to a 3-to-1 ratio. Had we done so last year, there would have been a considerable amount of projects that would have been underway, that would have been awarded. There were communities such as Middleborough and I believe Wareham, possibly Mattapoisett, I believe also New Bedford, that lost out on projects. New Bedford, I believe, had a $500,000 water project that just they didn't receive the funding for. It would have been into effect this year had we gone to the 3-to-1 ratio. So I'm hopeful that we can make some kind of a compromise, realizing that we could possibly get some $400 to $500 million worth of work out there for a relatively nominal cost to the state of maybe $12 to $20 million. I'm not sure of the figures, so I don't have them to give. There's a number of people that have co-sponsored this legislation with me. I think we have over 50, close to 60, maybe over 60 legislators. So the support is there. However, what has come home to roost on Beacon Hill has been the realization that projected revenues are declining, and they feel a need to tighten on the spending front because of the those of you who've been around long enough will hear about the word budget busters and the increase in costs in terms of the Medicaid budget and other issues in state government. So I'm hopeful that we can work some kind of a compromise out that will extend the state revolving fund program as it's currently exists with 0% interest to the communities, and will increase the amount of monies that will be out there for projects so that communities can get that work done. My feeling is that it's a good partnership. It works for the state. These jobs provide a real economic spin-off to the communities. They help the economy, so if there is any kind of a slowdown that's being forecasted or talked about, this is an effective way of combating it. The other aspect is the fact that by doing these projects, we're keeping the environment clean, or we're preventing it from getting it in worse shape. The need is awfully great, and it makes sense to go and maximize the amount of federal dollars that we're getting, because if that point comes when the federal government no longer funds the program, then the revolving aspect would come into play. And our repayment record in Massachusetts is excellent. We have enough fiscal safeguards so that if a community wasn't going to be repaid, we could make claims on things such as local aid and other aspects. So really the program is sound. It has good oversight. We can go to the 3-to-1, and hopefully the legislature will be agreeable. The key here is that the governor has indicated that he would veto any legislation that had 0% interest. So we really have to do a job of convincing the legislative leadership that this is an important and beneficial matter, that it would be we're able to override any kind of veto, and it would be expected that if there was a Governor Swift, that she probably would take the same position as Governor Cellucci. But having said that, I'm open to any questions that you may have. I'm going to work this in earnest with the House leadership in the hopes that we can get something in the budget, and if not, we have the legislation. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of support from the Mass Municipal Association, as well as various utility contractors, and as well as environmental groups. So it won't be lacking in support. It's just a question of working the finances out. And if I could, I just want to go and state that unfortunately I have a commitment and I have to leave before 1 o'clock, and I apologize for that, but it's something that can't be helped.
Shouldn't announce that on TV, Bob.
Well, when they see me not here, they'll wonder why, and they'll at least have a...
I just want to add to that, certainly an excellent explanation. And first, I want to brag for these three guys to my right who, too modest, but we're very fortunate in this part of the state that we have both chairmen of the Natural Resources Committee are from Bristol County, Bob on the House side and Senator Pacheco on the Senate side, and Bill Strauss and Mike Roderick's are longtime members of the Natural Resources Committee.
And Senator Leary.
Senator?
Newly arrived. Member of the Natural Resources Committee.
Great. So if it was another part of the state, they'd say that they've stacked it with special interest legislators if it was another topic, but we're very fortunate to have their leadership on that important committee. And in Dartmouth, under Lenny and Mike's leadership, we've had tremendous success with this SRF program. We've gotten rid of well over 1,000 septic systems using this, probably closer to 2,000. What we've had is, with their leadership, is have the projects ready to go, to put them in the pipeline, not say, we're doing the design and maybe in 2 years we need the money. But we were fortunate also working with our congressional delegation, Jim McGovern and Bonnie Frank in particular, to get the extended repayment from 20 out to the 30 years, and we were fortunate, I was telling them, to have Carol Browner, the former head of the EPA, right here announcing that a couple of years ago. So I know in Dartmouth we've done wonderful things with this program, and we hope to continue. Just to add a downside to it, though, there's two things. One, and the towns don't have to admit this situation, but as we oppose the 2% add-on at the state level, it begs the question what the local communities are adding on at their level. I know under the statute you can add up to 5% for administrative costs at the local level, and I think sometimes I've been approached by people in administration, wait a minute, you're saying it's outrageous as 2%, but these towns are tacking this on. So I think that's something we got to think about. And the second issue on the funding of it, which Bob alluded to, but not only do we have the downturn in the economy, but we passed question 4. I'm sure there's more than a few people that voted for the income tax cut, which is fine, but we can't say we want to expend more money on these programs at the same time cutting our revenues. Not only was the question 4, another charitable income tax break was in there, which is another $200 million. So we're looking at, over the next couple of years, $1 billion less a year to work with on trying to expand these programs. So just to throw that out as a caveat of what we're dealing with on the financial end.
I'll just chime in here also. I mean, we're all tremendous supporters of the SRF program. We're all aware of the issue with the impact on the ultimate rates or betterments that homeowners would be charged if a program went through with a town receiving the 0% as opposed to potentially a 2% loan. On that issue of the local add-on, my memory is when we've gotten these fundings in Mattapoisett, there has been no, okay, correct. So in Mattapoisett, we've had no add-on surcharge, which I think is keeping that bargain with the homeowners and the taxpayers. That will be a difficult fight this year. As Bob Kazera pointed out, we have, I think, an indefensible position from the current future former governor on this position, but with the U.S. Senate's leadership, maybe he'll be gone quick enough so that when the budget comes up, someone with hopefully a different perspective, in this case James Swift, can be persuadable on the value of the 0% loan program. So we'll have to be optimistic on that. I do want to point out one other tool that's available for communities that can complement these programs sometimes, and that is the tax credit for septic system repair, which under a State Department of Revenue ruling a few years ago was made applicable to sewer connections, so that if a homeowner had the ability to tie into a municipal sewer system as an alternative to fixing a failed septic system, those costs could be taken by the homeowner for that up to $6,000 tax credit, which John was really in the lead on that, but a few years ago in the budget, all of us from down here joined and made that, we extended the time period that you could take that $6,000 tax credit, made it more available for people at lower incomes. We'd like to take another shot at enhancing that tax credit, at least its availability to people. The trade-off that you have to understand is that tax credit would get offset to the extent that there is already a state financial assistance in the form of the 0% loan. So ironically, homes that are financed or septic repairs and sewer connections that are financed locally through a municipality's own bonding or from federal sources are better able to take advantage of the $6,000 tax credit. You're going to get state assistance one way or another. Either you get it by the subsidized loan in the 0% loan program or the tax credit, and we're all very much aware of that availability to the communities as well.
I'd just like to add one thing, Michael, if I may, not to echo what my colleagues have been saying, but there is pretty much universal agreement to go to the 3-to-1 leveraging of the funding, but with that comes a fiscal reality that there's increased debt service. And the debate in Boston and with the governor's office and administration of who's going to pick up that increased debt service. And they do look at the fact that local communities pass on the cost through local assessments. And so some sort of compromise hopefully can be worked out. Maybe that assessment is split between the state and the community. But I really believe we're going to go to 3-to-1. And we should, because there is a sunset to when this federal money is going to be available. So we should take advantage as much of that as possible. But with that, as I say, it does come a fiscal reality, and we're going to have to face that. Thank you.
I think you make a very good point, and I think on the two aspects of the bill that I think all of you have signed on to is this leveraging issue. With the economy sort of cooling, that we see happening, I think, and also a lot of the resources are going certainly into the depression of the central artery. There are a lot of companies. I mean, we're bidding some projects right now without any SRF projects, and we're seeing that they're out there looking to line up the jobs. The numbers come in better. I think if you can leverage it, and you'll certainly do your best on the issue of it's 0% or 2%, but if you get that additional leverage and you get more money out there, there's going to be a cost savings, in my estimation, in the bidding for more projects that are out there that companies are going to take advantage of. So there's going to be some cost savings there. So, I mean, I've always been an avid supporter of the 0%, but in turn, if we can put out 150 million more available for projects and get things started. I know this project we did in Dartmouth had a tremendous economic spin-off. I mean, it was a $12 million project, but I knew they were renting property for business locations, engineers, and everybody was in town working. It's got a tremendous, I think, as Bob stated, it's got a tremendous ability to even help the economy, especially in public works project area, which are kind of lean right now in Massachusetts.
Just a question, Michael, and to everybody's information. Has the calculation ever been done, as Bill said, with the offset on that tax credit? With the interest rate so low now, is it financially better off for a homeowner not to get the 0% because they've got the tax credit to the full extent? If you can get a local bond at whatever they're going for now, with the full tax credit, maybe the bottom line might be...
The advantageous thing to do is take that credit over the full 4 years that you can and run it out. But see, like when a betterment runs to $11,000, $12,000, a lot of them can't pay that betterment off in that period of time. So like what we encourage people in Dartmouth, where they got the 0% for this project here, take it for the duration, get the credit on the other things that you had related to the project, hooking from the street to the house, the engineering, the recording of the deed, the plan, all of those things, maximize it in a number of different avenues, because we've told them, hey, at 0%, even with the 2% we put on, which goes towards paying abatements for those lots that are not buildable, you take your money, even if you got ready to pay it, put that money in an interest-bearing account, you're going to make money on this thing and be able to pay down and earn money to pay down even more. So, I mean, it's a nice blend. I think it worked very well in our community. You got that tax credit, the sewer credit, you got that low-interest loan. So I think, as much as I like the 0%, 2% still, if you get more money out there, it's still got an advantage. Because I got projects right now that are advancing without sewer credits. So, I mean, even with 2% and 2% of the town, you get it at 4 versus 8, which we're going to charge without a SRF. Any of the committee members wish to particularly address the state revolving fund issue, including the issue of drinking water? I think drinking water, the first year is funded this year. Certainly, we've got some big drinking water projects in various communities. Anybody want to address any of those particular issues? Yes, Jeff.
Expanding on what we're talking about, which is wastewater, in the very near future, you're going to be also looking at federal mandates on stormwater in certain neighborhoods within the Buzzards Bay area, New Bedford, for example, Fairhaven, Buttsford, and certain other areas. From what I understand, the intent of the state is to combine stormwater MPDS permits with the state revolving loan program. So now you're going to be adding a brand new section which is going to siphon money out of the state revolving loan program. But I haven't heard anything from anyone in Boston indicating that there's going to be funding to provide for stormwater issues that are certainly going to be hitting all of the major communities in Massachusetts that that fall over 50,000 or abut a community that falls over 50,000. Does anyone want to address that concern?
Only in that I touched upon it in some discussion, and I mean, it's a national problem. It's a problem that affects the northeast coastal communities, and it affects the west coast. And it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and I would hope that the Congress would be able to go and provide some assistance in tackling that, since they're the ones that are mandating the fact that communities have to remedy it. But you know, as John mentioned earlier, the state spending is being constrained in part because we're reading the tea leaves of projected revenue streams, and those revenue streams have been considerably cut back with the referendum. But the answer to your question is no, there hasn't been any program that has been devised. I mean, the executive, the administration hasn't come forth with any. They're willing to go to 3 to 1, but they want to share the cost with the 2%. I think that the CSO problem is something that's going to hit hard even more communities, and I mean, they're dealing with a surplus in Washington and how they want to spend it, and I think that there are some needs that go unmet. This is certainly one of them, and we have to look to them for some answers.
Any others wish to address the revolving fund? I would probably pose the question to you, and I certainly got the correspondence that was furnished to us by Bob Gazzara, but I'm interested in how municipalities, how we can help from our end. We voted a couple of weeks ago to send a letter out to every one of the cities and towns in Massachusetts asking them to support the House bill in regards to the leverage and the 0% interest. I know the Mass Water Resource Council, which I believe a number of you have attended the meetings on that, are highly supportive, and Bob referred to the Mass Municipal Association. I mean, what is it going to take? What is it going to take so that this year we can get that larger sum of money out? I mean, what more can we do to push this issue?
Well, probably the only unturned stone would be with respect to the Mass Municipal Association, their meetings with the governor to impress upon him a little bit more flexibility in terms of an approach that they take, and really it comes down to numbers. And I mean, I'm going to bring it up with Chairman Rogers, but I don't know. I mean, everything that we get from him, he sent a memo now about pension costs going up, is sending one signal, and that's that they want to constrain spending. So, I mean, I think you continue what you are doing, which is to communicate and educate with your legislators the importance of this, and the realization that there's a very real fiscal impact on this. There's more money going out in the street. It's going to help the economy. It's going to clean the environment. It's going to correct problems that just have to be corrected. However, there is a limit to how far the state is going to go in terms of their budget in addressing the fiscal aspects to it. And you know, the end result might be that we don't get 2%, we get 1%, or it might be that it's more short term and we buy some time, or it might be that we go to a 3 to 1 and we don't win on it, but it won't be for lack of trying. And I think that you got to understand that there's some real dollars that are being impacted here. Initially, on an annual basis, it's not that much, but over the 20-odd years of these bonds, they add up, and they add up significantly to what the state's obligations are for what they call underground infrastructure, unseen. So it's not a slam dunk by any means, but it's worth making the fight because of the importance of it and the fact that it works very well as a 0% interest, as a partnership between the state and the communities. They have some documentation of when they had it at 2.5%, that many communities just didn't put applications up to get the work done. So, hopefully that will be something that can be used to go and convince them to go to this. But it's very much an uphill, and I wouldn't want to go and give the impression that there's magic numbers to get at. I think it has to be a realization and a priority and a commitment that is made by the legislative leadership, by the executive to go this route, because it's a tens of $1 million bottom line that the state is assuming. And if the economy does go down, you're going to hear about local aid, and you're already hearing about Chapter 70 monies and MCAS and education reform. Accountability and responsibility go hand in hand with the monies that come from Boston. But again, I think that it's worth making the fight because of the fact that the federal monies will end at some point in time. And if we can maximize that, then we have a greater source of monies to continue to fund these types of projects.
I think, and you're going to gauge it certainly as the debate goes, and you're going to hear from the executive office. I think if you stay close in touch with us and you see that the 3-to-1 leveraging, the passage of that is not going to pass with the 0% interest rate, if we have some discussions and through our group and through the MMA group, we know which municipalities and which projects are even willing to go at the 2%, so that you can get that 3-to-1 leverage. We ought to have that communication so that we don't lose everything. I agree with you. I think this federal funding, all indications are that it does not look so promising that may be there. If we lose the window of opportunity for the sake of the 2%, and there are projects that environmentally must be done, and the people are willing to pay the betterments, and they're willing to take them at 2% plus whatever the community is carrying, versus 8%, which is what I can do now, I think there are some projects that I know of that would advance, even at 2%. I want you to fight the battle for 0%, but don't lose the 3-to-1 leverage.
We won't. There's a solid commitment. The trust fund board is composed of 3 members. 2 of them are appointees of the administration, and the third is the state treasurer. Mm-hmm. And she raised it in the summer, where she wanted to go to 3-to-1 immediately at the 0%. The credit rating would stay the same, even though the reserve is cut back to 1/3 from 50%. The governor was adamant. He instructed the 2 members to that board that you will not go to a 3-to-1 leverage until the 2% interest kicks in on July 1st of this year. So we're faced with a very short window, and a more likely vehicle will be the budget as opposed to the legislation, although both are in play. And I think that they will definitely go to the 3-to-1 with the 2%. The effort is being made to try to eliminate going to the 2%, at least for the period of time, say the next 4 or 5 years, so that we're maximizing the federal dollars that are coming. We get about $45 million from the state, and we match that with about a $9.1 million state match. That $54 million goes into the trust. The trust is earning monies, and it's being leveraged so that there's about $75 million or $150 million that goes out for bond work. And under this 3-to-1 ratio, they would be able to increase that to some $225 million. per year. So it's a given that they'll go to 3 to 1. It's just that they refuse to do so without the 2% interest. So I think that your whole, as far as that argument goes, the key is going to be whether or not we can get them for a short period of time to keep it at 0%.
I think just to put it in its proper context, the article that you wrote in the December 6th edition of the Standard Times puts the total projects for wastewater at $1.2 billion, $500 million in drinking water. So I mean, even at that number, we're looking at what's on the list, taking 6-7 years just to get to. And I know if any communities like ours or the ones of the BBAC, there are ones that aren't even on the list yet, on the intended use plan from the DEP. So certainly your efforts, and it looks like this year probably is the best year for this battle to have some successes for the community. We thank you for your efforts on that.
I'll leave on a high note. I do have to leave. It's 1 o'clock, and I do have a commitment, and I apologize for that. But I did communicate to the organizers that if you could have started a little earlier, I could have started.
Yeah, we got that, and certainly we thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the issue of the, first of all, my manners are not here. I failed to welcome Senator O'Leary. Welcome here to Dartmouth. And we're very pleased you took the time to go over these issues with us here in the community. We'd like to move on to the issue of wastewater discharge recertification. This is a key issue that the towns of Wareham, Fairhaven is dealing with this particular issue, and some of the other communities. You've certainly seen what the costs are associated with getting their discharge permits reevaluated, what criteria is being put on, and we'd like to see what discussion we could have on the particular issue of how the legislature might be of assistance in dealing with the fiscal, what it comes down to all the time, it seems, the fiscal implications of what these recertifications require. Jeff?
I don't know if I'm the expert, but I'm one of those, unfortunately, has to face the music. There's 3 of us that I'm aware of, Wareham, Fairhaven, and Falmouth in the near future, that are all roughly in the same boat, and that's that the MPDS permit, which is a federal permit which is issued in theory every 5 years. Ours happens to be about 9 years old at the moment, but sometime this year we expect to be receiving a new one. And obviously every time there's a new permit issues, they change some of the limits, obviously, to try to provide cleaner discharge to go into whatever body, be it an ocean, a lake, or a river, or in our case we discharge into the Acushnet River. Each one of those upgrades and the requirements within the permit on discharge limits impacts tremendously the ratepayers within the community. I know Wareham is looking at a combined discharge and upgrade to the plant. We're talking converting from chlorine disinfection to ultraviolet light, and also the new topic, and most plants now are going to be nitrogen removal. For each community, no matter where they are located in the coastline of Massachusetts or whatever body of water they discharge into, those costs right now are solely going to be borne by the ratepayers. And I think one of the problems that you're going to be facing fairly shortly in the near future is a combination. Not only is the MPDS permit renewals, and they're all staggered obviously across the state, but most treatment plants that were built, I'll use Fairhaven for example, the last upgrade was in the late 80s, so roughly in the late 2007 period approximately, we'll be facing the 20-year anniversary of the last expansion or upgrade of the plant. There's not a lot of money out there. There's not a lot of people talking about the upgrades that you need. A lot of the programs we've been talking about earlier this morning specifically deal with expansion of sewer systems and to try to reach neighborhoods that, be it the project that Michael mentioned earlier in Dartmouth or in some of the other neighborhoods. But one of the things that I see lacking and needs to be addressed, I think, in a very near future is the maintenance of existing process, be it the wastewater treatment plant or collection system pump stations that exist, because each one of those are running 365 days a year as far as treatment plants and pump stations. But most of the cost of doing the repairs to those are being borne by the ratepayers. I don't see any assistance at this point. Federal government, using the example of the last expansion, paid 75% of the capital improvements back in the late 80s. That program doesn't exist any longer. The state paid 15% and the local communities paid 10%. But I can see this becoming a major issue is the repair to the existing infrastructure, be it its wastewater that Michael asked me to speak on, or be it in the water area. The same thing's going to hold true. So I don't know if anyone on the panel wants to address that issue.
It sounds to me like there's going to be major capital needs in the short term, within the next few years in this region. This is the first time that this issue has been addressed to me, and I can tell you from sitting on Ways and Means, it hasn't been as part of any of our budget discussions. So I think what we need, hoping this is a vehicle to begin these negotiations. I can tell you that on the big scheme of things, I don't see any source of revenue for this other than coming out from some other pot. So communities are going to have to voice to their legislators what their priorities are. Is it Chapter 70? Is it Chapter 90? Is it SRF 0%, 2%? Is it maintenance? And there's a limited, finite resource of available funds from the state that's gotten over the next this and the next 2 fiscal years, having a big chunk taken out of it. Have you saying that the feds have backed out completely? It's an EPA mandate, and the feds aren't providing any.
Well, there's no more federal programs that I'm aware of. I'm looking at a couple of people in the audience here that participate in state or federal agencies, and they're shaking their heads
right
no.
now with the greatest surplus is the federal budget. And before they enact a 1.6 trillion dollar.
What was till about
yesterday was the Senate. Oh, the Senate door?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. But I think we should look to the available source and provide us with information on what this pool. How much are you looking for? 100 million, 200 million?
Well, I think nationwide, I can't give you the figure, obviously.
I don't care about nationwide.
Well, the only reason I mention nationwide is what you just alluded to, and that is the fact that the federal government right now is rolling in money, and I don't disagree with President Bush saying they should give some back, but I think at the same time you have to look at what your capital needs are, and I'm talking maintenance needs. It doesn't do a lot of good to a lot of people to expand systems when you can't maintain the systems that are already in place. And I think that's what we're dealing with, and be it it's sewer or water issues, or as you mentioned, schools, for example, whatever. I think it's incumbent upon our legislators in Boston to be, first of all, aware of the problems that exist. Not only we're sitting here in Buzzards Bay, I'm talking on the east side of the state, South Shore, wherever, but also the fact that this is an ongoing problem throughout the country, and the federal government is the only ones that are going to be able to address it, and I think they've walked away from the issue. State revolving loan program was their method of walking away by saying, here's a chunk of money, you administer it, and we wait by hands of it, where in the past they used to contribute 75% of those capital project needs, be it was an expansion or building of a wastewater treatment plant or a rehab of a facility. They don't do that anymore, and Representative Kazara said it appears like by 2008 or thereabouts they're going to walk away from any money, even in the state revolving loan program. So it's an ongoing issue. It's no different than, as you mentioned, there's priorities that people have to set. But be it it's a school system, or be it it's a wastewater treatment plant, or be it it's a water filtration plant, those needs are not going to disappear. And the ratepayers, I think, are going to be faced with some serious decisions in the future, but you also have a limitation as to what, depending geographically where you're located, what a ratepayer can afford to pay. And I know EPA has limits on what they feel you have to pay, and that's going to inhibit additional programs, be it CSO removal or whatever, from actually taking place in some communities, New Bedford being one, I think, as the future goes on. Fairhaven's a step higher maybe in an income bracket, but not much. And therefore, there's going to be a limitation as to what the ratepayer can afford to pay.
Just to follow up on that, just briefly, I think, not to push it off to the federal government, but I think that your opening sentence was the federal mandate. Under our state law, we can't have unfunded state mandates on local cities and towns. So I think we're on your side. We're happy to interact with our federal officials, but if the federal government is going to mandate it, I think it's difficult to turn to us and say, you guys aren't requiring us to do this, but you got to pay for it because Washington said we got to do this. So I think we'd be happy to work with the congressional delegation, but you know, I think maybe we got the wrong panel up here for that question.
Well,
Yeah.
An interesting sort of twist on this is there was a meeting at the Federal Reserve Bank in early February. A delegation from New Bedford came up, Fall River, Dartmouth was represented there. And it's an interesting take on this because Barney Frank, Marty Meehan, and Jim McGovern were there, and John Kerry was on a phone connect back to Washington because he couldn't be there at the time. And the mayors put it even more succinctly with the CSO issue. Lynn, Lawrence, Springfield, and Holyoke, the mayors spoke in this hearing, and they said basically, don't look to us taking the SRF money to deal with combined CSO issues because we still got to pay back the principal. We're carrying enough already on the ratepayers for the wastewater plant improvements like they've had at the city of New Bedford. Don't expect us to carry another rate increase to deal with the CSO issue, even if you are going to give us interest rates at 0 or 2% or whatever. So I think they got a clear message. They got a clear message, and basically they said, hey, you know, maybe the new administration, I think this was, I don't know, a week or two after the new administration had taken over. EPA director regional director had left. The acting director got the message very clearly from the mayors and the representatives. But it is a federal issue. But I think one thing you can certainly help us as a legislator is support these people, these representatives, these U.S. representatives, and going back and say, hey, you know, it's not fair. It's not fair for towns, and it's even worse for the cities for the CSO issue. And maybe you can be the strength behind talking to the representative that covers your particular district and saying, hey, you know, we support you, what we can do on our end, you know, to push the issue, because they're saying, hey, it's time. It's time now, this federal direct grant money, similar to what Jeff was talking about in the late 80s and the 70s, where we did some of these things to get treatment plants to start with. It's now the next phase. You know, these treatment plants have to put in UV treatment. They have to, you know, come up to higher levels and things. The next phase of that sort of thing maybe needs to come into place. And I'm sure nationally this is an issue. It's not just something that's indigenous to Buzzards Bay. It's certainly, I know, on the North Shore, a critical issue. And certainly, I think making that contact to the U.S. congressmen and the senators and having that personal conversation with them and say, hey, you know, we support you. What can we do locally? Okay? Any, yes?
I would like to turn it over to the chairman of the board of selectmen.
Okay.
Hopefully this works. Tom Barlow from the town of Bourne. We're in the same situation as Jeff Osich, Fairhaven. We're in a regional agreement with the town of Wareham, and they're upgrading their facility, and it's approximately $22 million in cost. The town of Bourne's share is $4 million, but in the town of Bourne there's only 1,000 users, and it's held in an enterprise fund. And when you think of it, 1,000 people coming up with a capital cost of $4 million, and they've already paid betterment fees. They're only probably halfway through paying their betterment fees, and they have overage fees to pay. And they're not allowed to have a separate facility, which would be smaller and not subject to the restrictions of the larger plants. They're in a real dilemma. And it's really state mandated that they be involved in a regional facility. They had tried back in '88 to go their own way. And at that time, the master plan for DEP was to regionalize. And so many towns across the state get involved in regional type of facilities. So I just want to echo Mr. Osich's concerns that these upgrades are going to cause substantial impact to ratepayers because you can't put it on betterments. So you're going to see rate increases from, say, 225, 250, going up to 600 to the limit, basically. They'll go up to the economic limit that can be raised as far as the figured by median income of the area. And it's a real concern. I think people that are in your district, in Stowe area, I know it's just barely outside, but they like you very much. Need all help we can get.
They're redistricting, maybe.
All these towns, and in the future, all the treatment plants are going to have to face this upgrade. And it's a serious concern because we've maxed it out through betterments and user fees, and now we're going to turn around and double, if not triple, some of the user fees. And it's going to be a lot of constituents screaming to you. So anything you can do, I'd appreciate it.
Let me offer a comment, which is I acknowledge kind of an incomplete response to what has been brought up so far, but it's something you have to realize. All of these issues, when we're talking about SRF and now the continuing maintenance obligation, if you expand your sewer system and you bring in more happy people who are connected to the sewer system and off of septic.
This is not to expand this. Is just to
But it relates because we talk about maintaining the SRF program so we can bring 50, 100, 200 houses at a shot into the system, and many homeowners think this is great. They know what people are paying now, but they don't realize that added use or expansion into the sewer system is going to come back at them separately from the betterments in new charges when the maintenance costs come in. And so the point I want to make is these issues, and I represent essentially growing towns. This may not be a city of New Bedford concern, but for those of us who represent growing areas or growing towns, this is really part of the planning process that you're undergoing, which is trying to contemplate what the community is going to look like over the next 20, 30, 40 years. And the way you decide the maintenance issue for those who are already on the system is going to happen. But the way in which you decide how you expand access to some sort of, I'll talk about the sewer system, is going to affect this, so that not that there's a magic bullet out there in terms of alternative technologies, but there are other kinds of systems which may be available in different parts of different communities, not all parts of all communities, that might, over the long haul, get you into less of a maintenance bind in terms of how they're designed and how they operate. So as different communities move ahead to the expansion of the sewer systems, think of how this maintenance issue affects you as well, and also what areas of your towns you open up for development, because otherwise you'll just be in this spiral of buying into these added costs. So it's something that it's not just a question of extending pipe through your communities. It does affect how the communities grow and what kind of costs you unintentionally buy into in the future.
Mark, you had something?
Just a comment, Mark Rasmussen from the Coalition for Buzzards Bay. Before the election, Len and I had talked a little bit about how could we take the opportunity of a number of plants coming to the same point in time as to basically elevate the whole issue of nutrient removal or nitrogen treatment at these treatment plants, which is a lot of the driving force, particularly in Wareham and Falmouth and in Fairhaven. To do what Long Island Sound did, which was basically to get congressional money for the Long Island Sound study, and many hundreds of millions of dollars were strategically, all of those treatment plants were upgraded. And they didn't do it by saying, we are a handful of towns in Connecticut who need some help with their wastewater. They did it by using their Long Island's congressional designation as a significant national estuary, which we also have, as a way to say, this is why we need to spend this money here. It's for this estuary. It's not for town of Fairhaven, town of Wareham's hurting for sewer money. And so just as an idea of how we frame this, that might be a way to go.
Good point.
Just one quick comment. There's obviously a problem here, and Jeff has pointed out that we have to look ahead. We can't be reactive or wait to be reactive to this. We should start to begin to be proactive. And by raising this issue here at this forum, we can stop being proactive, and with whether the Buzzards Bay Action Committee becomes more involved, and Representative Strauss hit on it in the planning process. It's not just sewer and maintenance obligations of wastewater treatment plants, but we also have solid waste issues that we have to start looking to the future. Stormwater runoff that we talked talked about before, and just by communicating and by holding this type of forum regularly to educate us, I think goes a long way in being more proactive in the future.
I think the next issue that we have sort of falls within the same realm, and that is with the new EPA regulations going in effect relative to stormwater, municipalities are going to be responsible for, again, dealing with another issue that comes down from on high, and that is how do we deal with the degradation of surface water, such as rivers, streams, brooks, things of that nature, by discharge from major roadways throughout our community. The Executive Director, Len Gonzalez, is going to spend a little bit of time sort of giving the background of what we face in a particular dilemma throughout all the Buzzards Bay communities, and see if we might be able to figure how we could address this collectively. Len?
I'll spend a very little time giving you the background because we've been talking to you about this for 3 years now, and each time we have gone back to do some of the homework that would prepare the issue for your ability to address it. And what we have now, thanks to SERPED, that has been working very diligently on the GRIP program, and I think each of you had a sheet up there that is basically just a cover sheet, and if there's anyone else that wants them, I've got some extra copies over here. But basically the GRIP program identifies areas of importance in stormwater runoff throughout the county and throughout other counties as well. In addition to that, Joe Costa's over here, and the Buzzards Bay Project has been working on a stormwater atlas and has brought that pretty much to completion. If it isn't complete at this point, it is very close to being complete, which identifies, again, significant areas significant problem areas in stormwater runoff in the communities in Buzzards Bay. And Tracy is now bringing up the town of Mattapoisett.
Trying to find Strauss's mansion now.
Is that big house on the hill? With all the runoff? No. But the thing is, with the request that we have on this, we're not...
Actually, it's the one in the flight path going...
Figured you'd find that one. It's not really those areas of concern in each of the communities, other than those areas of environmental concern off of state highways. That's specifically what we want to address with the piece that's before you, question number 3. And what we'd like to, and what we asked a number of years ago was some way, because each time we've met with the State Highway Department, they've told us we would like to address areas of concern with stormwater runoff off the state highways. However, we don't have a line item budget for it, so we have to wait until we find out if we find any nest eggs in the course of the year. And then what we normally do is we respond to the group, to the community that's been screeching the loudest, and then we work on that if we can. And that's all been fine up till now. However, what they suggested to us is that if some way we could prioritize, get them a list of areas of significant concern, prioritize so that it doesn't become a political kind of thing, it becomes something they can go and get the facts on, then they would be a lot more in a position to address those. Specifically, if they had a line item that they could count on each year to begin with. So what we would like to ask, and I'm glad that we have a number of our local delegation with Ways and Means, because what we would like to ask is for, in addition, an amendment to the state highway budget that would include a line item for dealing with stormwater runoff problem areas on state highways. And where a lot of the homework has been done, thanks to SERPED, thanks to Bill Napolitano, thanks to Joe Costa and the Buzzards Bay Project, where a lot of the homework has been done, then we believe it's time to put that line item in. And I think one of the things that the BBAC and the coalition and the project would like very much to see is that line item in the budget.
How much? Do we have the priorities? Do we have the list of?
There are two lists
Okay.
that the state DPW would be able to draw from in determining priorities. Would we be there lobbying? Yeah. For Buzzards Bay? Yeah. Yeah, we will. But as far as how much, as much as you can spare. I honestly can't tell you, and I don't know if any member of the board would be willing to hazard a guess as to how much. What we'd like is as much as we can get, but let's be real. Again, you've been telling us about how there is belt tightening going on. Given the belt tightening, fine. Deal with the belt tightening, but give us something, at least a start, so we can begin to work on a problem that has plagued our waterways, our water supply areas for years and years and years, and continues unabated. We really need some assistance in this, and we think what we've done is not so much from a community's point of view, but from a protected estuaries point of view and a watershed area point of view, dealing with an issue that should be addressed, and everybody all along the line has said, at least in my presence, has said, yeah, that's a good thing and we ought to do that, but there's this problem with a line item, but there's this problem with doing the homework. We hope that we've addressed those problems, those obstacles, and would like to see something put into effect now.
Quick question, Len, would that be a capital need? It seems to be more in a capital budget as opposed to, an amendment to the Ways and Means operational budget, because if it's, it's to build structures or build, help.
I think it could be, well, it might be a capital need, but I think
that maybe we should approach it as if there's going to be a capital sup or a capital budget or companion piece with the budget. I'm just throwing it out as an issue that it may be not operational, a recurring cost.
I would defer to your expertise on that. My gut feeling, however, is this is a maintenance piece, and as a maintenance piece, it ought to be a part of the operational budget.
Just to follow up with that, it's funny. I'm going to put Mark on the spot here because I've got the water quality testing they've done, and just an example of this in our little part of the world is the north part of Padenham Harbor, north of the bridge. It's one of the most polluted portions of Buzzards Bay, and according to Mark Rasmussen, it's in large part from the west end of New Bedford and Buttonwood Park Zoo. The runoff going into the stormwater, going through the brook down into the north end of Padenham. So that's the type of thing on a small scale that we're trying to address. So.
I think in the area, and Mark can report it, they have ranked along the whole watershed, specifically on the I-195 corridor, the areas that have the highest priority. So certainly they can provide a prioritized. But I think somewhat to go to the issue of where it is a capital type project, but part of the stormwater regulations require best management practices in the maintenance of the structures that in fact they install. So you're going to have to take a twofold. You're going to have to put something in an operational budget so they maintain whatever the improvement is that they put in.
The question I have is, and I notice on this is very good. It shows the areas of high concentrations of fecal coliform. What exactly does Mass Highway, is it collection? What do they do to address these problems?
Joe?
If I could address some points.
Look at the callers, because they have to record. They have to use the callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Costa, Buzzards Bay Project.
We're on the record.
The Buzzards Bay Project is in the process of making all these maps that you're seeing, the black and white maps. And what we're trying to do is inventory every single catch basin and stormwater discharge going into Buzzards Bay and the major tributaries to it. And I should say we're doing it. Actually, Aria Brissett for the Buzzards Bay Project, she's the planner who's actually doing these maps and doing a lot of the field work to get it done. We're including both the private roads, the town roads, and the state highways. For the private roads and the town roads, there's a couple of grant programs that are out there that are funded through the Transportation Bond. Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management has a CPR program. The DEP has some federal funds on the 319 program. In practical terms, those programs give maybe a couple of $100,000 a year on average, $300,000 a year on average, to address those non-state highway discharges, which is really a small drop in the bucket. When we prepared the management plan, we estimated that on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars to $1 million a year over 10 years would be the cost for treating all the discharges in Buzzards Bay. With regard to the Mass Highway Department roads, when the towns go to the Mass Highway Department and say there's a problem, for example, there was a discharge when they repaved Route 28 in Falmouth, a new discharge was created. It wasn't part of the plan to treat that discharge. Mass Highway will tell the towns they don't have it in their budget to address and treat these discharges. So there's a couple of different layers and problems, both to try to fund the non-state highway projects, and then Mass Highway has, of course, the big dig and everything else going on. Treating all those, stormwater discharges from the highway sometimes gets pushed to the bottom of the list.
Exactly. I guess I had a technical question. How does Mass Highway treat this problem? Is it retention ponds, settling ponds, filtration? I mean, what?
Historically in the past,
I don't know how
they weren't treating it. Now they have environmental planners so that when new work is put in place, they do vegetative swales, they do detention ponds. They don't do under the road infiltration like a lot of the towns are doing. They say it's a maintenance issue. That's one area that they refuse to install. Like a lot of the towns around Buzzards Bay have leaching catches. So they rule out certain kinds of BMP, best management practices, but they are installing others, and it's subject to land availability, their budget constraints, and so forth.
We have to say that the local District 5 office, I think it's Michael Carmichael, has been very willing to address this particular issue. They've advanced some preliminary design in some of the more problematic areas along the interstate. They could provide their estimated numbers to get some of these pilot projects underway, and they probably could tell, some kind of budgetary number for maintenance, yearly maintenance purposes. Mark?
Just a quick thing. There's a great example of highway treatment system in the East Providence exit off of 195. They're using actually the clover leaf as a detention basin and a settling pond, something we don't typically see very much of here in Massachusetts, but right there in Rhode Island you can see a good example of it. I just wanted to make a really quick statement about what the Baywatchers report says about Buttonwood Brook, and we don't say that the zoo's had a lot of good improvements lately, so the zoo is not still something we're really looking at seriously, but Buttonwood Brook at the very top is primarily Route 6 and Route 140. Both of them coming together at a T, providing a huge source of stormwater, and actually in our recent sampling, some hot data points right there where it's coming up contaminated as it enters the zoo from just north of Buttonwood Brook. So just wanted to correct that.
Want me to read the couple sentences in here that talk about the zoo?
Yeah. Mark, would you pass that to Dave behind you?
Dave Janik, Buzzards Bay team leader for EOEA. I think it's important that we let you know a little bit about what EOEA, CZM, and DEP are working with Mass Highway on right now. For a while, we've been working with them to identify when they do major road reconstruction about how they have to meet the stormwater standards that are currently in the State Wetlands Protection Act. But the threshold, again, is major road reconstruction. That means where they're ripping up the drainage way, where they're not just going in with a quick repaving job. If they're doing anything less than reconstruction, under the stormwater standards in the Wetlands Protection Act, they don't have to do anything. That threshold doesn't trip. So I think that's some of the areas where the town may want some help. They may identify a big problem, but sorry, no major reconstruction is due for the next 10 plus years. Well, you're just going to have to wait. Where there is the major reconstruction, we're working with them on to try to develop some priorities on how you decide where they go in and do the best job, and how they try to meet those standards as good as possible. An example is that over at Hicks Bridge in Westport, we had to demonstrate to them when they came in to do the bridge repair why that particular location was very sensitive and needed them and therefore required them to do a much higher job than they initially wanted to do to repair the road discharge over there. So a lot of progress is being made with them to try to set priorities and help them know when they need to focus, but there's still other areas where thresholds aren't tripped, where probably these additional funds would be useful for a town to go and say, here's the problem, can you help us?
Along that same line, we were talking earlier about the new MPDS permit for stormwater. And if you think of every community sitting here, most of us have the same two major state or federal roadways that go through, 195 and Route 6. There may be spur lines coming off, like 140 or 240. However, when you look at the requirements, at least the ones I've looked at, and there's a seminar held not too long ago in Middleborough with EPA and DEP people, and some of the people sitting in this room were present. If you're going to try to resolve some of the runoff concerns in the communities, you also have to take into consideration that those two major highways cross through almost every community we're talking about. And they're all tying into the same body of water in a sense, that the outlet being somewhere down in Buzzards Bay. I think Mark alluded to it before, where Route 6 and 140 intersects, comes into Buttonwood Brook, and then obviously goes through the park and exits somewhere in Dartmouth, etc. That has to be addressed. And from what I'm hearing, in general speaking terms, is you, the community, are going to have to adhere to these new regulations, but you, the state government, may not have to. And, you know, it's like saying, well, clean up your act, but your neighbor can do whatever he wants, so you're pristine, but your neighbor isn't, but you're still discharging into the same body of water, so what have you accomplished in the end? And that's the point I think that it needs to be made, is that if you're going to have a program, the program has to be addressed by all parties that contribute to the cause, not just certain individuals or certain communities. And it can't be, well, you do it now, but using the example that I just heard, well, that highway is not going to be reconstructed for another 10 years, so we'll address it in 10 years. You haven't gained much. And that's one of the things I think that has to be kept in focus when these new rules and regulations come out. And it's only, I think, 2.5 years from now, approximately, when each community has to respond back and say, this is our plan. But I don't hear or see anything at this moment saying this is the state of Massachusetts plan dealing with state highways in the Commonwealth or through these certain communities.
Anyone want to comment?
Good point.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get you out of here by 1:45 because we share the facilities here with the school next door. But I just want to make one other issue, and it's not directly related to the Bay, but it's an important issue, and that is I've heard, and I'm sure some of the other administrators here have heard, snow removal, and certainly I almost fell out of my chair last night when the finance director told me where the DPW was on snow removal, snow icing, and more specifically this recent storm. I would respectfully ask that you can certainly do the best you can to take up this issue, as we have done in the past with some bad winters, in some supplemental snow removal assistance. It would be greatly appreciated. As you know, it's probably one of the only line items we can deficit spend, but it means on FY 2002, before we set that Schedule A, I've got to appropriate $100,000 or $200,000, and that kind of money chalked off for the next fiscal year is going to be brutal. Please, and if any help you can be in that particular issue, it'll help these cities and towns with the next fiscal year with the constraints that you certainly have alluded to today. I'd like to thank the legislative delegation for, in fact, coming, taking the time. Certainly your input and your assistance is greatly appreciated. Thank you. If any of you have any closing comments that you wish to make, certainly we'd be pleased to hear from you.
Well, I haven't said anything. I defer to the experts who've dealt with it. I certainly have written down a lot of stuff from my boss. I think that one of the things that I've learned, I live in Wareham and work here in New Bedford, and so it's an interesting perspective because I hear the different issues in town and where I live and obviously where I work. I think this is one, when you talk about Buzzards Bay, it's one of the issues regionally that I think the entire delegation agrees on. I mean, there's so many different things that go on up in Boston that this is one issue that when you look at the Senate side, Senator O'Leary, Senator Murray, Pacheco, Menard, and certainly my boss, they agree on that things have to be done. I think the representatives here have mentioned what my boss is facing as he gets set to write his budget is that money is certainly a question mark. There was an article in the Globe the other day where revenue is just, you can't predict it. You don't know, they don't know what's going to happen. And the House is right now in the midst of doing their budget, House Ways and Means, and the Senate is trying to gauge theirs, and you just don't know what's going on. And it's very hard to look at the different issues and look at the monies that are being forecasted or not forecasted and try and determine a budget. Mark sent me down with 3 pages of notes here. It was interesting, Len, with your issue there with regards to the last thing we were talking about. He said here, for a matter of fact, that as far as the line item in the budget, it seems that that line item would be best suited for a capital supplemental budget. That's just what he gave me at the start. But it's the issues that I've heard here today. A lot of them were in the notes here that I got, and I know the representatives certainly mentioned them, certainly far better than I could. But I think it's something that the entire delegation is on the same page with. I think Roderick's mentioned too that you really need to talk to, I think, other municipalities outside the region. I think you're preaching in a sense to the choir when you're looking at this delegation, but it's going to take, there's 40 senators and 160 reps, is it? I want to make sure that I get that. So, I mean, there's but there's other people that have to be convinced too that certainly aren't sitting in this room right now, and that perhaps some don't even know where Buzzards Bay is. So, I mean, when you communicate to the Mass Municipal Association, the other groups and the other organizations, get them on the same page. And, I mean, I think that the delegation is certainly going to be in communication with the congressional delegation to try and see what can be done on the federal level. I mean, it's tough on the federal level with the cuts that are going on. It's certainly tough on the state level, just by the revenue forecast. But I thank you for allowing me to at least sit here and listen to these folks, as it's certainly an education for me too. And I do have a lot of notes that I'll certainly bring back to my boss.
Great, Jim. We appreciate you taking the time to come. Any others wish to make a closing comment? Again, thank you very much for coming, and we see the snow is back.
You mentioned it.